In front of my eyes, and I found that very, very exciting. But can I mention something lest it remains unsaid? These guys, Edward Mutalis specifically, John Tlale, I mean, we did not play any of the matches in 1996, but I'll tell you, for the morale of the team, for the singing and all the motivation, I want to give these guys. Nobody has ever thanked you publicly, Madumisha. And I think you two guys have done an excellent job. John Tlale led us in song. I mean, even when he was not in the team, but he kept the spirit going. And I think this is something that people must not forget about football. It's not about you being on the pitch. Now, you talk about what made the team of 1996 to tick and to work very well. I think to do justice to that subject, we'll have to look at the various aspects of what makes a successful national team. The first point is the players themselves, the composition of the players. Now, in 1996, you had, fortunately up to that point, a group of South African players who had played together for several years, lost a lot of games, 4-0 against Mexico, 4-0 against Nigeria, 4-1 against Zimbabwe, and were called 4x4s, quite legitimately so. But what happened was that during that time, the team, even in defeat, began to gel together and gain a lot of experience. Now, by the time we came to 1996, you have had a group of players who had played together for quite some time. You have had a group of players who already had some of them playing in Europe, particularly in Turkey. You know, Fani Madida was playing in Turkey already. Steve Kompela was in Turkey. Shoes Msho was in Turkey. And a few other guys in other parts of Europe. But you also had South African sides that were doing very well in CAF competitions. Technical team, you had a local coach, very key, very important, understood the South African player. Clive Bunker had coached Amazulu, Zulu Royals, Durban Bushbucks, Durban City. He had experience in coaching various teams in South Africa in various settings. He understood the South African player, African player, colored player, white player, and could get them to gel because he had had professional experience at that level. Now, you get into that administration. Sticks Mrewa, leading administration of SAFA, was a very, very supportive administrator, ensured that there are resources to back the national team and also give the national team space for the coaches and the technical staff to do their work, and supported them in everything that they wanted to do in as long as it was in advancement of the development of the team. Then resources. Sticks Mrewa ensured that there are resources, there's money, there's backing, there are sponsors who could put all of these programs and ensure that they can happen. And now you also had preparation. In 1996, South Africa had the habit of hosting a whole host of friendlies with quality opposition, particularly the Four Nations tournament, wherein South Africa could bring in Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Egypt, and many other countries to come and play here in South Africa. Therefore, that team also were well prepared for that particular tournament. And finally, what I call the extramural activities that were playing at home and the Madiba factor. Now, all of those things made that team of 1996 a very unique team that had a whole host of factors that were working in its favor. Remember that the treatment room was the headquarters of the team, because every player comes through the treatment room in one form or another. Even those who are not injured, they come for their daily massages, you know, all of that. So we used to sit there right up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m. because we chat, we talk. The guys who play overseas share their experiences. They also want to know what is happening back. And it's amazing how guys like Shoes and Steve Kompela were always eager to know and understand what is happening back home, because when you're away playing in Europe, you got very little contact with what is happening in the sport. When you talk about unity and spirit of camaraderie among players and spirit of brotherhood and family spirit among players, I think it is something that must be driven by coaches. And you've seen some of the most successful coaches in the world are coaches who can actually get their players to gel, even, you know, outside the playing field. Now, you talk about the class of 1996. Now, Clive Bunker is that type of coach. He is a player's coach. And I typically tell the story that on a Monday morning when you come into camp, Clive Barker will arrive and then would have examined the players and checked those who have injuries and dictated those who are fit to be part of the squad and those who can be given treatment and recover on time, all of that. And he will have the first training session, usually a very light session, after which Clive will call all the players for a beer. Have a beer with the players, and they will chat and they will talk about everything else. And his idea was that instead of them drinking behind my back, let me have a drink with them. On Tuesday morning, he has a changed person altogether. He's no longer that person who had a drink with them, who had free banter with them, and they understand he's changed, he's backing instructions from the corner like a kennel, and the players understood, and they knew as they were enjoying the beer that tomorrow it's going to be a different ball game altogether. But they could enjoy that because within that time he chats to them, he gets to get things that he otherwise would not have gotten about that. Take again the late Bruno Metsu, bless his soul. Now this is a French coach who managed Senegal in the 2002 World Cup in Korea and Japan. I mean, he used to meet most of his players in Paris and had free banter with them. In fact, they met every Sunday afternoon with the players who were not playing on that day, developed that kind of spirit. And by the time they walk into the tournament and they work together, they've built that spirit. That spirit and that brotherhood is the work of the coach, and which is why it is so important to choose a coach that understands the culture of the players, what makes the players tick, and to whom the players can relate. And most of the time, these are your coaches that come from the same nationality as the players. I mean, you saw in the World Cup, the recent World Cup, that all the African teams had a local coach for the first time, all five of them. And by the time you got into the semifinals, all the teams that were in the semifinals were actually coached by their nationals. So it does indicate how important it is to have a coach that understands the players, the nature of the players, and who can be patriotic with the players as well. What can players do to manage their finances in a manner that is much more sensible, in a manner that doesn't allow us to see and hear stories of players who are struggling after playing football illustriously and earning lots of money during their playing career? I think the problem of people being bankrupt or worse off after illustrious careers is not unique to football, in my view. I mean, there are many other careers, medicine included, by the way, of people who struggle, after having worked successfully for a very, very long time. And I think quite often it is because people don't understand that financial management is actually a professional skill. A lot of us think we can manage our finances on our own. And I think one of the best advices I can ever give to anybody is that get a professional next to you very early in your career who's going to advise you on how to manage your finances. Remember that naturally all of us, when you have money in your hands, you want to spend it. You want to spend it on the things you want. And it's very difficult to think about the future. It's very difficult to think about what could happen if your career were to hit the rails, at any given point. So my advice, especially to footballers and other sports people, is that get a professional advice and listen and heed that advice. Because it is one thing to get advice and not to do what people advise you to do, because some of the decisions that you need to make are very, very difficult. Advisors will tell you to put money away when you want to buy a car. They'll tell you to put money away into a property when you want to go on holiday, and so on and so forth. So develop a relationship where you can trust your financial advisors, listen to them, argue with them where necessary, but always deal with them with a sense that they have your best interests at their heart. I think in addressing the issue of how players can get attentive, how players could listen to financial messages or financial advice and implement whatever it is that they're advised, my view that there are two things that we might want to look at. One is to start financial education when the players are still in development. We talk so much about development, under 12, under 14, under 17, under 20. It is during that time when it is important to talk to players and educate them financially before they have the money, so that by the time they have to address that situation, the education is there already. And at that time, it's easy for them to assimilate this knowledge and engage with it before they have the challenge of, when you talk to them, once they have their money in their hands, it might be a little bit difficult to get those messages across and to implement that message, those messages accordingly. The second point, in my experience, and this I have learned from Glenn Binkin. Now, Glenn Binkin was was actually the manager, player manager, or manager of the team in the 1996 team. And because of the close relationship that he developed with most of the players during that period, when he changed careers and moved into player management, and he contacted most of the players who were in the 1996 team. And I think he advised a lot of them, accordingly, not only about their careers, where to move, when to move, transfer fees and all of that. He did a lot of financial education on those players, roping in professionals to assist him. So one plea that I want to make is that player managers, don't just look at the career of the player, negotiating contracts with them when they move from one club to another, negotiating endorsements for them. Also make sure that because they have a trust relationship with their players, also make sure that you can be the people who rope in financial managers during that period and within that relationship, because players usually have a very, very tight relationship with their manager. How important it is for players to look after themselves. If you're a football player or any other sports person for that matter, your asset is your body. And that asset is the asset that you use to derive an income. And therefore, your body is your asset. Now, if you don't look after that body, then your ability to earn an income gets diminished. Now, one of the most interesting things about the recent World Cup was the number of old players, and by that I mean players who are over 30, who participated in that tournament. If you look at the Argentinian winning team, I mean, they were led by Messi, who's well over 30, and Di Maria, who's well over 30, and a few other players who were stalwarts of that team, which begins to tell you that modern football is moving into a space where players will actually mature and contribute to the development and to the winning mentality of a team way beyond the age of 30. Now, you can never play beyond 30, 35, 37, as people like Ronaldo do, unless you are looking after that body. And if you take Ronaldo as a typical example, what he eats, how much he sleeps, where he takes his body, are things that are very, very critical and that have made him to sustain himself up to that age. Modric, he plays up to that age because he's looking after his body. And now you can see South African football. We have a tendency when a player gets to 30, 32, we teach them, said, they are over the hill. Now, the world is telling us a different story altogether. And we need to say to the players, if you want to be like Ronaldo, if you want to be like Modric, you want to be like Messi and play effective football up to a very, very late age, you've got to look after that body. You've got to understand that alcohol is a toxin. Alcohol can only affect your body negatively. Alcohol can only affect your mind negatively. Alcohol can only affect your behavior, which will get you into doing risky things that will threaten your career. Alcohol is not the sportsman's friend at all. Tobacco also and any other toxins. If you want to maintain that body for a long time as possible, you've got to ensure that you can use those things for as minuscule as possible. Watch what you eat, train regularly, have a lot of sleep, get time to relax, and spend time with your family.